Up next on the channel, another vintage $6 Million Man kit. Well, hey guys, and welcome back to another Interested in Modeler. I have another vintage $6 Million Man kit here to share with you. If you recall, last year I built this one here called the Bionic Bust Out. And after completing that kit, I had so much fun doing it, I thought it'd be cool to get a hold of the other model I had as a kid, and that was called Jaws of Doom. This is what the box for that kit looks like. Unfortunately, when I looked for it, I couldn't find anything under $120, and I didn't want to quite spend that much money on that kit. As I did more searching, however, I came across this one called The Fight for Survival, and I was able to get it for about 40 bucks, which is a good deal considering I went online the other day just to kind of see what the kits are going for now, and I couldn't find anything under $120 for this kit. Now, bear in mind, these kits are getting harder to find, so no doubt they're going to get more expensive as time goes by. As far as I know, I think they re-released the kit once or maybe twice, but they haven't been re-released in a very long time, so no doubt they've gotten a lot more rare. And you might be asking yourself, why is he tossing an ape over his head? Well, if you look at the side panel of the box, it explains why. You can see here he is trying to help some people who are stuck in the jungle get rescued, and as he's running through the jungle to find help, he comes across an ape, decides he has no time for him, and just tosses him away. So, you know, it's funny, this kit did not really appeal to me as a kid. I thought the alligator was a better looking kit. But I'm looking forward to building this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got two figures to work with here, obviously Steve Austin and the ape. And for Steve Austin, my goals are going to be the same as the last one. I don't want to alter the kit a whole lot, but I do want to replace the head with the same sculpt I used then. And I also want to add some lights to his bionics. But beyond that, I'm going to try to build the kit as is. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to begin with here is showing you the parts, and then we'll move right into the build. Now, before we get started, I want to mention I'm recording this intro post-build. I actually took a vacation over the last 10 days, so I was out of town for a bit of time there, and I did get a lot of the building done prior to me leaving, and I was just able to finish the model here just today, actually. Now, Wonderfest is just a few days away, and I'm hoping to get this video on my channel before I leave for the show, but I just wanted to mention that because after we're done with the build here, I want to spend just a few minutes to fill you in on what I'm taking to the show. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so there are 24 parts that come with the model. Some of these have been put together, which is why if you count through all of these that I have here, you're not going to get 24, but there are 24 total. So let's take a look at the figures. We've got the two sides of the gorilla. And of course, this is his head here, the two halves for his head. And we got parts for his feet and hands. I panicked for a second because this didn't look like I had enough parts for everything, but one side, his right hand, is molded into his body there. And we have the base. And then we have the Steve Austin figure. These are the two halves of his torso, arms, and legs. And we have the two halves of his head. This is what the face looks like. And we got both his hands, his shoes. Just like the Bionic Bust Out, we're going to have the bionics visible with one arm and one leg. These, of course, are the bionic elements here. This is the leg. And we have the arm. So I won't be using this head sculpt. Just like the Bionic Bust Out, I did 3D print one. I did make a couple alterations. I made his head just a little bit wider. The body sculpt is a bit awkward. I just tried to match the proportions of the head. Even this one does look a little bit large for the body, but I felt it was best to match the dimensions of this head, or at least close to it anyway. And just as with the Bionic Bust Out, I'll be using SMDs from Evans Designs to light up his bionic elements there. And I plan on having it hooked up to a connector switch, the plug-in connector switch, so that I can break down the model and be able to pack it away for travel and put it back together when I get to a show. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the gorilla first. Let's go ahead and begin. So I start with the assembly of the ape figure, which is pretty easy. I begin with the headpiece, and this is followed by putting the two halves together of the torso, arms, and legs. As you can see, this leaves a seam running along the entire perimeter of the piece, and epoxy sculpt is by far the easiest way to conceal it. The goal here isn't to just hide the seam, but also to recreate the surrounding hair texture already molded into the figure so everything blends together naturally. I've done this kind of work on other projects before, but this time I decided to try something recommended by Lou Del Maso, the epoxy sculpt finishing solvent from Avis, the same company that makes epoxy sculpt itself. It's designed to help blend and feather the edges of the putty, giving the finished area a smoother and more seamless appearance. In the past, I've used water for this step, but this finishing solution really does make the process much easier. I start by applying a thin strip of epoxy sculpt along the length of the seam, then moisten it with water while using my sculpting tool to shape and blend the putty into the surrounding surface. The nice thing about the solvent is that you only need a very small amount. Just dipping the sculpting tool into it is enough to help smooth and feather the edges. Here's how everything turned out once the work was complete, and after a coat of primer had been applied. So it's time now to move on to painting, and I want to try to replicate the look of the original box art. So instead of using black, I decided to go with Vallejo Basalt Gray mixed with Neutral Gray as the base color. I then applied a black wash. I used a damp cloth to wipe away some of the wash and bring out that surface texture. With the highlights and shadows in mind, I wiped away more of the wash on areas that would have highlights and left a lot of the wash in place in areas that would be shadowed. I then dry brushed on some of the base color to bring back some of the lighter shades, and also dry brushed on black to enhance the shadows. And here's how he turned out. After painting the eyes and the mouth, I think I came close to reproducing the look from the box art. Okay, well now it's time to move on to the Steve Austin figure, and the first thing to do is to create a neck on which the head will rest. Based on the shape of the head and neck, I'm having the figure look up a bit versus straight ahead as was originally designed. And again, here I'm using epoxy sculpt to conceal the seam around the perimeter of this figure. Here's how it looked before and after priming. Well, it was on to painting, and as with the ape, my aim here was to reproduce the look from the box art, choosing a tan for his suit and blue for the turtleneck. And here is now the figure completed, including the painted head sculpt, which has a much better resemblance to Lee Majors. Alright, well it's time to give you a look at the Bionics. They are wired in now to the lights. This is some video showing you what they're going to look like when they're tied to a power source. And just like the ones from the Bionic Bust Out, these are breathing SMDs, so they'll pulsate like you see here. So the ones exiting the arm at the shoulder are going to be fed through the shoulder and through the torso. They'll connect up with the ones for the leg. And then once they're connected, those will be then hooked to a plug-in connector, and the wire for that will be fed through the back of the leg down through the ankle, and then it will come through the sole of his shoe here and exit out the front. Now you could feed the wires through the opposite side. I just felt it was easier to be able to have a larger opening to run the wires through. It's the same method I used for the Bionic Bust Out. Once everything is put together, I'll be painting up the shoes. I wanted to wait till the end so that I could get the colors to match. So everything's been wired through now. Let me just take a second to show you how the lights look. And here you go. I remember as a kid envisioning his Bionics to have lights, kind of like Data on Star Trek. I think this is really a nice touch. And I really do like the breathing effects from those Pico lights. And here, by the way, is a look at how the wires ran through his shoe. And now it's connected to that plug-in connector. And now that this is done, I'm going to go ahead and finish up with the shoes and move on to the display base. Okay, so I'm well on my way now building the base out, and this of course is the base that comes with the model kit. The plan is to adhere it to this piece of foamular. You can see there's a hole there for the wires to feed through to the bottom side. I already have a little space carved out for our power source, which is a coin-sized battery. And I'll be placing some Velcro over this to hold everything in place, just as I did with the shuttlecraft build recently. And of course our wires here will be connected to this plug-in connector, which joins up with the wires as they exit out through here. And I'll have a power switch on this side. As usual, I'll finish off the sides by adding in some styrene plastic. I'll be putting in the $6 Million Man logo here on the side, just as I did with the Bionic Bust Out. Now, I also found these files for jungle plants, and I printed out some, because I thought there's plenty of room to add some foliage here to the sides, and I thought that would add in some color. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I intended on making the model so that I can take it apart, pack it away, get to a show, and put it back together again. And that was easily done with the Bionic Bust Out. However, the way this is set up with this figure glued onto the $6 Million Man here, it's a bit awkward. I've tried to consider ways of making it so that I can take on and off the gorilla, but I just don't think that's going to be possible. There's just not a lot of support here on its own. So I don't think I have any alternative but to glue these two together. The one thing about the Bionic Bust Out is that the pins also had a bend in them, and that was to support the weight as he was on the door. But these pins just go straight down. So I think after a bit of time taking them on and off this way, eventually this is going to loosen up. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think I'm going to have to, at some point, glue everything to the base here. I just don't think it's going to be possible to continually break him down and put him back together again. I am going to definitely leave it this way for Wonderfest, because I plan on taking this with me there, but I think from there on out I'll have to adhere the figure and everything to the base. Well, after texturing the base with my usual mix of Mod Podge and terrain powder, I moved on to painting using various shades of brown to replicate the look and colors seen on the box art. Once that was complete, everything was tied together with an umber wash. So this is how it looked when that was completed, and at this point I started questioning whether adding the printed plants was really a good idea here, since they felt a little out of place sitting on bare terrain alone. I reached out to my friend Joe Hudson, who suggested adding some simulated grass to help blend everything together, but I mentioned that I didn't have a static grass applicator, which is what many modelers use to apply that stuff. But Joe made a great point. Wild grass wouldn't look perfectly manicured like a lawn anyway. He showed me a few examples from similar builds he'd done in the past, and his technique was surprisingly simple. Just building up several layers by sprinkling the grass material. As luck would have it, I already had some simulated grass on hand, so I decided to give his suggestion a try. I gave that ample time to dry and worked on painting up the plants using various shades of green. And this is how it turned out. Okay, well the next step is to glue on these black styrene plastics and apply the $6 Million Man logo. I'll go ahead and proceed with that and show you the completed project next. Alright guys, well here is the completed Fight for Survival $6 Million Man kit. The figure measures roughly 6 inches in height, which puts it at about 1/12 in scale. This kit was originally released back in the mid-1970s under their Fundimensions line. I started to build with the 8th figure, which was very straightforward to assemble, consisting of both a front and back side for the head and body. The seam running around the perimeter of the figure was easily addressed using epoxy sculpt, and fortunately the surrounding texture wasn't too difficult to recreate. For blending, I tried Avis's solvent solution for the first time, and found it made the process much easier compared to relying on just water. For painting, I chose a combination of dark grays and blues to recreate the look seen on the original box art, and overall, I'm pretty happy with how closely it turned out. The Steve Austin figure was also simple to put together, although I decided to replace the original head sculpt with the same 3D printed version I used on my Bionic Bust Out build. It has a much stronger resemblance to Lee Major's, and after resizing it to fit the figure, I think it works far better than the kit's original head. Since the Pico size SMD lights work so well on the Bionic Bust Out, I repeated the process here and really like the effect they added. I think it gives the model a nice extra touch. Once again, using the box art as my guide, I selected colors to match the vintage look, which turned out to be a fairly straightforward painting process. For the base, I glued the included stand onto a Foamular display base. My original plan was to paint everything in a single color, but it ended up looking a little too plain. So instead, I added some simulated grass along with a few 3D printed jungle plants, and I think it all came together really nicely. And to finish off the piece, I used my Cricut Joy to create this adhesive decal of the $6 Million Man logo. Overall, this turned out to be another fun and nostalgic build, and it makes a great companion piece to the Bionic Bust Out. Both models will be on display at the upcoming Wonderfest show. Alright guys, well that's going to do it for now. I hope you enjoyed following along. This is a fun project to work on for sure. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to contact me here on my YouTube channel or at illustratedmodeler@gmail.com. Okay, well let me wrap up here by spending a minute talking about Wonderfest. Regarding my entries, I plan on bringing the two $6 Million Man builds, as well as the Johnny Quest hovercraft, and finally the speedboat shuttle. Now the shuttle is something I debated on bringing because I just wasn't sure I'd be able to pack it well enough to survive the trip. But what I decided to do is to pack the display base and carry that in the suitcase, but I will be carrying on the shuttle itself with me onto the plane. I've been able to pack it well enough into a smaller box. It's actually the box that it came in, and but it is small enough to be able to slide underneath the seat in front of me. I've got a carrier that I think will work really well, and that way I can keep an eye on it the entire time and not have to worry about it getting damaged as the luggage gets thrown around. The other models, they've all been set up, as you know, to be disassembled and put back together at the show, so I've packed them away really well, and I think that'll turn out fine. So as for my coverage now, I plan on repeating what I did last year. I've already have a few interviews set up to do for the channel and hoping to get at least a couple other ones. I really like the way last year's videos turned out. Okay, well that's going to do it for now. I still have some packing to do and getting ready here for the show. It's literally a couple days away, and if you are attending the show, I look forward to seeing you there. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you then in the next video. Take care.